What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday we talked about that Nintendo Switch update 13.0.0 that added audio Bluetooth functionality. Well, there was another feature that was added in that's starting to lead to quite a bit of speculation as we head towards that Switch OLED release. We're going to go over that one here today. Also, we're going to be talking about the potential for another system on top of the Game Boy that could be heading to Nintendo Switch Online, and we're going to be going over a delay that has hit a pretty big title for this holiday. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Lost Judgment. Now, this game is out next week, and fans of Judgment that released back in 2018 are certainly looking forward to this one. Certainly looks off the wall and over the top, where it looks like you're going to be going undercover at like a school. But either way, we did get our first review for this game, and it is from Famitsu, which means we can play the game of, did it score better than Sonic Forces? Remember, Sonic Forces scored a 35 out of 40 from Famitsu. So let's take a look at the score here for Lost Judgment. Comes in at a 38 out of 40. It got a 9, a 10, a 9, and a 10, and that is 1 point higher than the 37 out of 40 that Judgment got back when it released in Japan. So that's exciting stuff there for fans of Judgment, looking forward to this new entry with Lost Judgment. There's been talks about this potentially being the last game in the series because of issues that they're having with like the talent agency around the main character for the series. But either way, at least it looks like this latest entry, according to Famitsu, is 3 points higher than Sonic Forces. I would keep an eye out for some other reviews popping up here pretty soon as we head into next week. Also, we had talked quite a bit about the Switch price cut that was happening in Europe, and we were wondering if it would affect prices here in the US as well. Well, we could see this over on Twitter. This from Steven, who is from Axios Gaming, saying, Nintendo tells me yesterday's Switch price drop was just for Europe and the UK. The trade price adjustment is for the European region only. There are no plans to change the manufacturer's suggested retail price for any Nintendo Switch model in the US. Now, obviously that's a shame because it would be nice to get a price cut for the regular Switch now as we head towards that OLED model's release, although I guess it still kind of slots in at $200 for the Lite, $300 for this regular Switch, the red box Switch we have now, then $350 for the OLED Switch. It just appears changing exchange rates and all that affected the pricing to the point where Nintendo had to alter it in Europe and in the UK, as is noted here. So unfortunately, not really expecting too much to change here in the US and other parts of the world. Maybe as we head towards the holiday and Nintendo could be looking to just kind of cycle out of this red box Switch, just kind of have the Switch OLED model take its place, then we could maybe see some price adjustments as they look to get rid of them. Oh, and we did have a new color variant announced for the Pulse 3D headset for the PlayStation 5. You can see this posted up by PlayStation Blog, where they say Pulse 3D wireless headset in midnight black launches next month. And that means we've had the DualSense controller get a black color variant, and now we've seen the Pulse 3D headset. And I don't know if they're going to get like a red one, kind of like what we had with the controller for the DualSense that came out alongside of that black DualSense controller. I think this is more or less just going to be, we're going to have a white Pulse 3D headset and then a black Pulse 3D headset to go along with the controllers there. And I do wonder if we're working towards a midnight black PlayStation 5 system, although while people are asking for that, I think it would just make more sense for Sony to just have shells, like official shells with like the PlayStation logo on them, which third parties cannot do. Just something like that so we can change them out. They already asked us to remove the side panels to either clean the system or to install the M.2 drive in it. So I mean, at that point, they already have accepted that we're removing them. Why not just announce and then release different shells that we can buy separately from a system that's already hard to get in the first place, and then they can release all kinds of different designs and stuff to celebrate releases as we go forward. That would at least be my hope, but I'm sure we'll see Sony do some big special edition system, maybe a Midnight Black, or one to go along with Forbidden West release in February. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo Switch Online, specifically all of the retro games that Nintendo has added to it for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. They have over 100 games as a part of this service at $20 a year, and there were a lot of talks and rumors and some reports even from outlets like Eurogamer around Game Boy and Game Boy Color specifically, not Game Boy Advance, heading to this service sometime soon. And that, of course, has spun up with the rumors around a Nintendo Direct happening in September, like Nintendo tends to do at least the past several years now with the Switch. But what about another system heading to the service? Because we do have Nate posting up this video here that says Nintendo Switch Online to add Nintendo 64. And this seems to be in response to Eurogamer, who posted up along with talks around Game Boy and Game Boy Color and them corroborating that side of the rumor that there were other systems in the cards, as they say. And it does appear that Nintendo 64 would probably be the next logical step. I guess you could go Nintendo 64 or Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo has done some stuff with the 64 with trademarks and different filings that seem like they were working towards a Nintendo 64 Mini. However, it could also be them working towards a Nintendo 64 edition for this online service. Take, for example, that Nintendo 64 controller image they did a trademark for. Well, that could work into an image they would use for something like this online service, or maybe even a full controller that they would sell like they've done with the Nintendo and Super Nintendo. That'd be kind of neat to be able to buy a wireless N64 controller in 2021, 2022 from Nintendo. And I wonder if they'd do something else with the analog stick itself. But anyway, the idea of N64 going to Nintendo Switch Online service after or even with the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, it does bring up some questions around how Nintendo would even approach that, considering Nintendo likes to Nintendo, so we have to expect them to Nintendo, meaning they would look at the $20 a year as being too cheap for the number of games they would bring out of their back catalog and throw onto this service. They're already over 100 games now. If they want to introduce 10 to 15 Game Boy games, then another 10 to 15 Nintendo 64 games, they could very quickly go up to 130 to 140 games almost overnight. So the idea of a premium tiered service is probably the most likely thing. It's been talked about before. I think last year, Emily Rogers was mentioning this, as well as others, that Nintendo would be exploring the idea of premium, more expensive options, kind of a tiered system with their online service where you can go with the cheapest possible service at like $20 a year and you'd still get some of these games, and you want to go up to 64 and you have to pay more. Maybe we get to a point where you could do GameCube. It's just kind of this thing that Nintendo, I'm sure, is looking at, and the way that they value their IPs and their back catalog, and they just want more money for them. Otherwise, they would see it as providing too much value, despite their online service not having the same feature set that we see from the other platforms. Either way, though, something to keep an eye on here as we head towards the really a rumored Nintendo Direct at this point, an expected one, I would say. But something to remember with Nintendo is whenever we seem to expect something from them, they just turn left completely and give us something else. So, hey, maybe we'll get that premium tier with the Virtual Boy. I mean, then we can finally use that Labo the way it was intended. Next up, let's talk about a delay for a big game that's coming out here in the coming months for the holiday season. That being Battlefield 2042. And this was an interesting set of events that happened here, because originally Jeff Grubb had mentioned, hey, it's delay season. There's still some games coming up here that will probably get delayed. And then he mentioned, oh, there's one in particular I'm talking about. And then rumors started to spread that it was Battlefield. And EA stock like just plummeted. I mean, seriously, we saw like billions of dollars in value lost with their stock because of this rumor. And obviously the concern there from investors is that one of their big title, Battlefield, was going to miss the holiday season completely. Well, hours later, it was made official, but the delay, not as bad as people were anticipating. We see this over on Twitter, posted up by their official account, saying we've made the decision to shift the launch of Battlefield 2042. The game will now be released worldwide on November 19th, 2021. Building the next generation of Battlefield during a global pandemic has created unforeseen challenges for our development teams. Given the scale and scope of the game, we had hoped our teams would be back in our studios together as we move towards launch, with the ongoing conditions not allowing that to happen safely. And with all the hard work the teams are doing from home, we feel it is important to take the extra time to deliver on the vision of Battlefield 2042 for our players. Your enthusiasm for the game has been very inspiring. We believe in the game we're making, and we thank you for your patience as we put some finishing touches into the experience. Updates on the open beta will be coming later this month. So after it was made official that Battlefield was going to be delayed about a month, the stock just jumped right back up because it's not missing the holiday, which in turn won't really affect EA's overall financial report for the quarter. If this had missed the holiday, that would have been a big deal, obviously, because this is going to bring in quite a bit of money for EA overall. And honestly, it's not as bad, I think, as people were expecting for Battlefield, considering some of the people who were in like the closed beta and alphas they were doing. There did seem to be some issues that they were running into, and that EA was going to have to work out here with DICE, and I'm sure many other studios that were probably jumping on board to get this done and out. And as they say, working with the pandemic, remote work, that doesn't make things easy at all, right? So I think this is at least good, because if the game launched broken as a multiplayer only game and it just didn't work, that would be worst case scenario, again, in a post Cyberpunk 2077 world. So I say, you know what, a month, not a big deal. And if the product ends up being better after the delay, well, that was probably worth it. Next up, let's talk about some new speculation that's been forming around the Switch update 13.0.0. Obviously, all the talk's been about the Bluetooth audio and being able to use like your AirPods or any headphones you have wirelessly with your Switch. It's a feature people have been asking for since the system came out, so that makes sense. But there was one other thing that was added in that kind of tucked away a bit there with the Bluetooth audio, and that has to do with the dock. Specifically though, the new dock that's coming out with that OLED model Switch. We can see this over on Nintendo's page that does describe to you how to update the dock firmware. However, it does say only the dock with a LAN port, that being model number HEG007, can be updated. This is the dock included with the Nintendo Switch OLED model. Because Nintendo Switch Lite is not compatible with any dock, this feature is not available on Nintendo Switch Lite systems, which now leads to certain kinds of speculation like this one. For example, here from Tweaktown saying Switch OLED dock can get firmware updates, may pave the way to Switch Pro. So why is this now coming up? Well, I will admit it is a bit odd that Nintendo felt the need to completely change out the dock. I mean, yeah, they added an Ethernet port in there, and that's great, but you could already do that with a USB adapter. In fact, Nintendo even recommended it with Sakurai in a direct. Hey, get this little Ethernet adapter, plugging into USB, and that's it. Really, they just replaced one of the ports on the back with an Ethernet port, removed a USB port essentially, and dropped that in there. So people are looking at that and saying, well, what else could they have done to this dock? One that would even warrant the idea of firmware updates. Well, to be honest, if they have that Ethernet port in there, there's most likely a controller and other things inside of the dock related to that Ethernet port that could use firmware updates as they go along. However, something to keep in mind and keep an eye on with this dock when it releases, if we find out that Nintendo's also moved from, say, HDMI 1.4 up to HDMI 2.0, that would kind of lead you to believe that they have some plans around something like 4K as we go along. Remember, this OLED Switch that's coming out next month is still compatible with the old dock, so there really wasn't that much of a need for a new dock unless Nintendo has other plans for it going forward outside of just an Ethernet port. And it was something I had brought up before, but we didn't know that there would be an option for updating the firmware in the dock until now. So it's going to be something, like I said, to keep an eye on here. And obviously when I get the dock, I'll take it apart to see what's going on in there, what chips are in there, and if we can identify them and figure out maybe there's a full scaling chip and it does have HDMI 2.0, because as we go forward, yes, I know that Switch Pro is going to come back up at some point in the future, and maybe this dock is the first step to get us there. So we'll see, but that most likely we'll be talking about more in the coming years as we head towards even maybe just the Switch 2. I mean, this dock could just stick with us for a little while if it is firmware updatable as they show here. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a brand new controller that's been announced for the GameCube. Now, just to make sure we're all on the same page, all feeling old at the same time, we just had the GameCube celebrate its 20th birthday the other day, as it did release in Japan in September of 2001. Anyway, here's the new controller. This is from Retro Fighters, is the Blade GC. It's currently up on their website for pre-order at the price of $39.99. They have the pre-order page live for, according to them, another 18 days or so, and the way they describe it on their website is an ergonomically designed controller that's compatible with the GameCube, the Switch, and the PC. The Blade GC features pressure-sensitive analog triggers, comfortable and accurate directional pad, and responsive analog sticks. Take your GameCube playing experience to the next level with 2.4 gigahertz wireless technology and a 10-plus hour rechargeable battery. It will be charging through USB Type-C, so good to see that there. And they do have 3 different color variants. That includes the classic purple, black, and then that really nice orange color that we had with GameCubes in Japan. So I think they chose the correct colors here. I, of course, will be grabbing the purple controller. We'll be doing a look at that here on the channel. I just like having these newer controllers come out with more modernized setups for older systems. And I mean, getting a GameCube controller that charges through USB Type-C with a little dongle you plug in like the Wavebird, that's always fun. And the D-pad being kind of up and to the left, but much larger than we have on the current GameCube controller, the stock one, much better for playing Game Boy or Game Boy Advance games through the Game Boy player. So looking forward to picking one of these up. I'll put a pre-order in here and we'll do a full teardown of it along with my impressions when it comes in. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a little poll that I posted up yesterday where I asked, would you rather a studio tell us about a game for the first time years in advance to build hype, or wait until the game is just about ready to go to reveal it? I mean, it appears 90% of you just want them to keep it under wraps until it's just about done. 10% said announce it years in advance so we know about it. And I think, depending on the game itself, of course, because there are times where a fan base just wants to know that they're recognized and that a game is eventually coming out. Take, for example, Metroid Prime 4. If Nintendo did not announce Metroid Prime 4, but then the Treehouse after that direct aired, this was in 2017, the Metroid game is a 2D Metroid game, Samus Returns, heading to the 3DS, people would have been really frustrated by that, right? They'd be like, why are you doing this to Metroid? It belongs on the Switch. But instead, they announced Prime 4, probably knowing that that would have been the other outcome, and here we are now in 2021 just hoping that everything's okay with Metroid Prime 4 because they had to restart development. So not always a great idea, as we also saw with Bayonetta 3, but then there are times where people get really hyped up and excited and they're willing to wait, something like Spider-Man 2, for example. That's just because we know Insomniac has a great track record, as they proved with Spider-Man, Ratchet and Clank, and so on there. But like Wolverine, who knows what that game's going to turn out to be? And that's not out for probably another 3 to 4 years. So I think it's case-by-case basis, depending on the situation and, of course, the title itself. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Bennett Games saying, I'm excited for Kena Bridge of Spirits, and I feel like no one knows it's coming out legit this Tuesday, but it seems like Sony isn't promoting it that much. I'm a little surprised that Sony has been pushing it more, considering they pushed Deathloop at like every single event, state of play showcase that they had. Even with this most recent showcase, they could have probably swapped out Deathloop for Kena and people would have been much more interested in that part of the show. Although I know Deathloop is something Sony can at least lean on this holiday, since they're not exactly doing a lot from a first party perspective the last 5 months of the year, but still, Kena is out Tuesday, and I feel like if reviews show up and they're very good, people are going to start talking about it once again leading into its release. The issue I have with this game is I feel like this is going to be a game that I'm going to buy digitally, and 4 months from now, they're going to release a physical copy, and that always annoys me. Either way, though, I am certainly checking out Kena Bridge of Spirits when it releases this Tuesday, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it on the podcast. And ladies and gentlemen, that's good to hear for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Nintendo Switch Online and other systems being added to it, with rumors and reports around Game Boy and Game Boy Color, now even Nintendo 64. How does Nintendo manage that, and which 64 games would you like to see them add to get things started? Also, what about Battlefield 2042 seeing a 1-month delay into November? And then the whole thing with the Nintendo Switch firmware update 13.0.0 now having an updatable dock. Do you think there's more to that new OLED dock than just the Ethernet port? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.